My name is Samantha, and I'm 28 years old. At my parents' anniversary celebration, my sister raised her glass for a toast, thanking them for bringing up an only child. My mom lifted her drink. My dad's face lit up with pride. That's when I stood and said something that froze the entire table. If you've ever felt let down by the very people who were supposed to have your back, let me know where you're tuning in from. I hadn't walked in planning to spark conflict. Truthfully, I hoped to make peace, to finally prove I could rise above it, be the bigger person. The restaurant was exactly the type you'd expect from a couple who once argued about whether their dog should have a middle name. Classy, spotless, maybe a little too beige. The kind of place where servers glide around whispering, and the meals aren't so much eaten as quietly admired from a distance. I showed up 3 minutes early, yet still felt like I was late. My sister, of course, was already commanding the room. Hair flawless, makeup perfect, holding everyone's attention like she was running a campaign or starting a self-help movement. She greeted me with a practiced air kiss and that soft, condescending tone she reserves for family holidays and special occasions. "You made it," she said, like she'd just spotted a casual acquaintance waiting at the bus stop. I gave her a smile back, one that stung, sharp as a paper cut. My mom offered a rigid hug. My dad gave me a curt nod, the kind you give when you bump into your mechanic in the grocery store. Naturally, my seat was at the far end, tucked away beside a ficus, facing my cousin's new boyfriend, who introduced himself twice and still managed to call me by the wrong name. I didn't complain. No sighs, no rolled eyes, no checking the clock, no scene. I kept repeating to myself that I had a reason for being there, that maybe, just maybe, if I reached out this one time, things could finally change. Not perfect, but civil. Bearable. Because I had brought something with me, something meaningful, a thoughtful, generous gesture I had been preparing for months. The envelope stayed tucked inside my bag, its corners soft and worn from being taken out and held so many times. It wasn't simply a check, it was a statement, a quiet, sincere way of saying, in spite of everything, I still wanted some kind of bond. Dinner started. The room hummed with shallow chatter, like the low buzz of a tired fluorescent light. My sister launched into a long story about a conference where she presented and my parents hung on her every word, as though she were quoting the Constitution. When I mentioned that I had begun a new freelance project, my mother blinked and replied, "That's nice. Does it come with health benefits?" By the time soup was served, I had answered exactly 2 questions, neither one about me. Then came the toast. My sister stood, glass lifted, smile expertly dialed in. "I just want to say thank you to everyone here tonight," she began, "for coming to celebrate the 2 people who raised me into the woman I am today." Applause followed. I clapped too, like a trained seal on cue. "And especially," she went on, turning toward our parents with the same carefully curated warmth, "I want to thank them for raising the most amazing only child anyone could ever ask for." And then, nothing. I paused for a moment, waiting, hoping that someone might chuckle, that my mother would gasp and say, "Oh my God, don't forget your sister," or that my father might cough, clear his throat, do anything to break the silence. But instead, my mother raised her glass, and my father smiled, the same smile he wears in posed Christmas photos. Not even a flicker in my direction. I could have burst into flames, and the only reaction I'd get is someone asking the waiter to refill the water. That's when the sound in my ears went quiet. Not dramatic, not cinematic, just a dull stillness, like I'd finally accepted a joke everyone else had been laughing at for years. I stood up before I even realized I was moving. I reached into my bag, pulled out the envelope, and walked calmly to the center of the room. No glass clinking, no preamble, just my voice, even and steady. "I had something prepared to give to the people who raised me," I said, "but I think there's been a misunderstanding." There was a ripple of confusion. Heads turned, my sister's face went slack, my mother's lips parted slightly, like she wanted to say something, but couldn't quite find the tone that would make it charming. I turned toward the table in the back where my aunt and uncle were seated, like second-string relatives who got the invite out of pity. They looked stunned. My aunt's hand fluttered to her chest. My uncle looked like he wasn't sure whether to stand or sink through the floor. I handed the envelope to them directly. No theatrics, no speeches, just a simple, "This is for you." Then I sat back down. For a long moment, no one said anything. No forks clinked, no chairs shifted. It was the silence of a bomb that hadn't quite finished going off. My sister blinked, like she was trying to reboot her brain. My mom tilted her head in that way she does when she's trying to convince herself she didn't just witness something deeply inconvenient. My dad's face was unreadable, but his jaw was clenched. And my aunt, she was staring at the envelope like it was ticking. I didn't say another word, and no one asked. The rest of the dinner passed in that strange, suffocating quiet, like the moment had sucked the air out of the room and no one was quite sure how to breathe again. But I breathed for the first time all night. I actually breathed, because I wasn't waiting anymore. Not for validation, not for permission, not to be seen. They'd raised an only child after all. So I gave what I had to someone who actually saw me. They say that when someone shows you who they are, you should believe them. I used to think that was just a quote people slapped on Pinterest boards, between photos of minimalist living rooms and avocado toast. But maybe Maya Angelou knew something I didn't. 'Cause my parents, they've been showing me who they are since I was old enough to understand what a golden child was, and more importantly, that I wasn't it. The signs were always there, subtle at first, like the way my sister's macaroni art made it to the fridge, while mine was quietly repurposed as a grocery list. Or the way my parents clapped when she sang off-key in a school play, but said nothing when I won a regional writing competition. I brought home a little trophy once. I still remember the way my dad glanced at it, then said, "You know, spelling bees don't count as sports." When I turned 8, I asked for a bike. My sister got a pink one with streamers, a matching helmet, and training wheels, just in case. I got a long lecture about how I should be happy with hand-me-downs. The hand-me-down was from a neighbor's kid. It still had mud on it. And yet I kept trying. I thought maybe if I was quieter, easier, more helpful, maybe that would earn me a little space. So I babysat, cleaned the kitchen without being asked, and brought home good grades. Straight A's, mostly. My mom called them bare minimums. When my sister got a B+ in history, there was cake. When I graduated high school, my parents forgot to book the restaurant they promised. We ended up eating at a fast food place because, as my dad put it, the fries are better anyway. My sister's graduation, they rented a private hall. There was a slideshow, speeches, even party favors with her name on them. You'd think she was giving a TED Talk, not picking up a diploma. But I didn't crack. I told myself I didn't need all that I wasn't that kind of person, that I was fine keeping my head down. I didn't realize that what I was actually doing was shrinking, silently, daily, and with practice. My aunt and uncle saw it first. They were never loud about it. They didn't swoop in and declare themselves my saviors. But they were there in all the small, quiet ways that matter. They used to babysit me when my parents wanted a break. I think I was 5 the first time they picked me up. My mom handed me off like I was a Tupperware container she'd grown tired of. "She's picky about food," she said, "and don't let her stay up too late." They didn't treat me like an inconvenience. They made popcorn and let me watch movies I picked. When I got scared during the never-ending story, my aunt held my hand and said, "He's just pretending to be scary, sweetheart." That was the first time anyone explained fear to me in a way that made sense. I spilled orange juice on their white carpet once and burst into tears. I'd been yelled at for less at home, but my aunt just brought me a towel and said, "It's just a carpet. You're worth more than that." When I was sick in college and couldn't afford cold medicine, my uncle drove 2 hours with soup and cough drops. My dad sent a thumbs-up emoji. No words, just the emoji. My mom suggested I try herbal tea. When I got my first job and was scared I wouldn't make it, my aunt emailed me every day for a week. Just little things. "You've got this. They're lucky to have you. Proud of you already." Meanwhile, my parents asked if it came with dental. They showed up for birthdays, for emergencies, for everything in between. When I got out of a toxic relationship and had nowhere to go, they cleared the guest room without hesitation. My mom said I should have tried harder to make it work. When I landed my dream freelance client, I told them first. Not because I didn't want to tell my parents, but because by then I knew how the conversation would go, and I was tired of shrinking. I tried once, just once, to explain all of this to my mom. I told her how much it had hurt growing up under the shadow of someone who never seemed to have to make an effort. She chuckled and said, "You've always been overly sensitive. That's your issue." Then she added, "Well, at least we didn't spoil you." And she was right. They hadn't. But neither had my aunt and uncle. What they had done was see me, listen to me, make space for me to exist without needing to earn it through performance. And in this family, that alone was revolutionary. There was this moment, just a few weeks ahead of the anniversary dinner, when I was sitting at their kitchen table sipping coffee, and suddenly realized I felt more at home there than I ever had in the house where I was raised. My uncle was in the middle of some goofy story about setting off the smoke alarm trying to make pancakes. My aunt rolled her eyes at him, but couldn't wipe the smile from her face. They had that natural ease that only comes from loving someone without needing to change them. I half joked, half confessed, "I used to wish I was yours." My aunt looked at me over her mug and said, "But you are." That moment took up permanent residence in my chest. As I walked into the anniversary dinner, I didn't have a plan to speak. I didn't intend to do anything at all. Sure, the envelope was still in my bag, but in my mind, it was still meant for my parents. Some quiet part of me was holding on to the possibility that maybe, just maybe, they'd surprise me. Instead, they erased me, softly, publicly. And for the first time, I allowed myself to accept what I'd always known. I hadn't been unseen because I failed to shine. I was unseen because they refused to look. So I turned my gaze elsewhere, and what I'd been seeking all along, I found it. The envelope hadn't been opened. I knew, because the following morning, I received a text from my aunt. Just a single question mark. No words, no emoji, just that small, curled symbol of confusion that somehow spoke volumes. I waited an hour before I returned the call. They answered on speakerphone. I could hear my aunt's breath before she spoke. "We haven't opened it." I smiled, though they couldn't see. "You can." My uncle cleared his throat. "Are you sure? We don't want to cross a line." "You're not," I said, leaning back on the couch and gazing at the ceiling. "You never have." They opened it together. I heard the rustle of paper, then stillness. No gasp, no exclamation. Just silence. A silence that made my chest feel weightless. I had transferred $50,000 into a joint account in both their names. No catch, no fine print, no clever legal tricks, just a quiet offering of repayment for all the gentle kindnesses they never once asked to be compensated for. And then came the whisper, "No, no, no, sweetheart. This can't be right." "It is," I replied. "You were planning to give this to them, weren't you?" I was. There was more silence. And then something gave way. Not like a dam collapsing, but like a thin pane of glass finally giving in after years of quiet strain. My aunt's voice shook, "But we didn't do anything to deserve this." "You didn't have to," I said. "You showed up. You loved me. You saw me. That was more than enough." Then my uncle spoke, his voice soft, almost sacred. "You don't know what this means to us." "I do," I said gently. "That's exactly why I did it." I assumed that would be it. A clean conclusion, a single act of clarity, wrapped in quiet peace. But of course, that's not how things work in my family. Because 5 hours later, my phone lit up with calls. The first one was from my mother. I didn't pick up. The second came with a voicemail. I played it on speaker while I folded laundry. "You made your point. This is some kind of stunt. It wasn't funny. Call me back." The third call came from my sister. That one I definitely didn't answer. Then came the text. "Sis, was that real? Like, the money? You were actually going to give them that much? Why them? They didn't even raise you. You're being dramatic. You humiliated us." I didn't respond, mostly because I was too busy laughing. The kind of laugh you only let out when something ridiculous finally folds under the weight of its own absurdity. By that evening, my dad had gotten involved. He doesn't usually text. He considers full sentences feminine and emojis leftist propaganda, but I guess the situation called for breaking protocol. "Dad, we need to talk face to face, not like this." Which, in dad speak, translates roughly to, "I don't know how to spin this yet, but give me time." What followed was what I call the regroup phase. My parents closed ranks, spun the story, tried to contain the spread. I got messages from 2 cousins I hadn't heard from in years. Cousin 1, "Hey, I heard there was drama at the dinner. You okay?" Cousin 2, "Oh, what did you say to Aunt Lorna? Mom's freaking out." Aunt Lorna, of course. See, my parents didn't just stew quietly. They activated the family network, like a political campaign. Suddenly, I was the unstable one, the emotional daughter, the attention seeker. But I didn't bite. I didn't explain. I didn't send my own version of events to the group chat. I just let them twist in their own silence. Then came the unannounced visit. It was mid-afternoon, 2 days after the dinner. I opened the door, and there they were, my parents. My mother in her pressed blouse and pearl earrings. My father standing like he was about to ask me to step outside and look at his grill setup. I didn't say anything. I just leaned on the doorframe. We'd like to come in, my mother said. No, she blinked. My dad looked past me into the living room, like I was hiding state secrets in the couch cushions. You don't want to talk this through? He asked. You didn't seem interested in talking when you raised your glasses to your only child. My mother exhaled sharply. It was a joke. No one laughed. We didn't mean it like that. Didn't you? I crossed my arms. You had all night. You didn't say a word. He straightened. You blindsided us. That's rich, I said, coming from the people who cut me out with a smile. Dad spoke again. $50,000. That's not a joke. You were going to give that to us? I was, I said. And you gave it to them instead? I didn't answer. We both knew. That money, my mom said, her voice tightening, could have helped us retire early, pay off the car, your father's medical bills. I know, I said. That's why I saved it. He stared at me, unblinking. So what changed? I smiled, not kindly. You toasted to your only child. She looked away. My dad clenched his jaw. So this is revenge? No, I said. This is recognition. I gave my thanks to the people who earned it. You're throwing away your family. I'm finally choosing one. They left after that, not with a slam, but with a quiet door click that felt heavier than it should have. I thought it might stop there, but then my sister joined the offensive. She posted some vague, emotionally manipulative thing online. A photo of my parents' wedding picture captioned, "Some people only show up when they want applause. Real family shows up quietly." I didn't respond. I didn't need to. The next day, I got a call from my aunt. We've been getting messages, she said, sounding embarrassed. From your mom and your sister. I figured they're trying to guilt us, saying we manipulated you. You didn't. I know, I hate this. We didn't want to be in the middle. You're not, I said. You're where you've always been, beside me. She didn't say anything for a moment. Then, we're not going to cash it. The money. You are. We don't need it. I know. We can't accept it. Yes, you can, I said, because I need you to, because I can't go back in time and make things fair, but I can do this. I can say thank you properly. He sniffled. You're going to make me cry. Good, I said. I was starting to feel like I was the only one. That night, I sat on my porch with a glass of wine and looked at the stars. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel smug. I felt sick, like something in me had been put back into place. The fallout wasn't over, but I wasn't afraid of it. Because when the dust settled, they'd still be there, my aunt and uncle. The people who never asked for proof, who never needed a performance, who knew who I was, even when I was still trying to figure it out. And now they knew what they meant to me, finally. I thought the silence would be the end of it. You know that moment after a storm, when everything's eerily still, and you convince yourself it's over? That was me, sitting in the quiet, thinking maybe, just maybe, they'd let it go. That maybe my parents would take the loss and retreat into their own cold little bubble. But that's not how people like them operate. Quiet was never peace. It was a setup. It started with a phone call from my cousin Theo, of all people. We hadn't spoken in years. He was the kind of relative who didn't bother remembering birthdays unless it showed up in his Facebook notifications. So when I saw his name pop up, I didn't pick up. He left a voicemail. Hey, just wanted to give you a heads up. Your mom's been saying some things about you, about the money. You might want to check your socials. I don't use Facebook much anymore, but I logged in. And there it was, a long, meandering post on my mother's page, with just enough vagueness to give her deniability, but all the usual trademarks, spiritual quotes, passive-aggressive scripture, and just enough weaponized humility to make it look like she was the one bleeding. She never said my name, but she didn't have to. It breaks a parent's heart when their child is led astray by people pretending to love them. Family isn't about money, it's about loyalty. We did our best, and now we're being punished for it. Sometimes evil wears a smile. Beneath that, the comments piled up. Church friends, old neighbors, acquaintances with too much time and too little information. Praying for your family. You don't deserve this. You raised your daughters right. And my favorite, people forget who carried them when they were helpless. One day they'll regret it. I almost laughed. Almost. But my hands were shaking too hard. Then came the real blow. My aunt called me, shaken. She had gotten an anonymous email. No subject line, just screenshots of old text messages I'd sent years ago. Ones I'd sent in moments of frustration. Complaining about them. Venting. Being messy. Saying things like, I wish they'd stop hovering. And sometimes I just want space. Things I never meant as betrayal. Just as noise. the kind you let out when you're human and tired and raw. The sender? My sister. She didn't sign it, of course, but she left enough breadcrumbs that it wasn't hard to figure out. I know you didn't mean it, my aunt said, but it hurt to see. And I believed her, not because she was guilt-tripping me, but because she was honest, because she told the truth, even when it was uncomfortable, unlike the rest of them. So I drove over. I sat at their kitchen table with a box of pastries and a pit in my stomach. I'm sorry, I said, for everything I said, for anything that made you question what you mean to me. My aunt didn't make a speech. She simply reached over and held my hand. My uncle poured coffee. No big declarations, no emotional embrace, just presence. This is what love looks like, the kind that doesn't require justification. That's when it finally clicked. It was time to stop forcing what had never worked, to stop trying to plug holes in a ship that had never been seaworthy, to stop calling it family just because we happened to share DNA. So I wrote a letter, not an angry one, not a rant, just the truth, a list of boundaries, a calm, firm line drawn in the sand. Please don't contact me again. Do not try to reach me through others. Don't twist the story, and don't expect reconciliation. I wish you peace, but I'm done playing the part you cast me in. I printed the letter and sent it by mail, so no one could later claim I never got it. A week after, my mother rang me from a number I didn't recognize. I let it roll to voicemail. Her message began in sobs and ended in anger. You've ruined this family. You've broken your father's heart. Are you happy now? And as I listened, I thought, yes, I am. But they didn't stop there. They tried to push my aunt and uncle to return the money. They sent formal letters, hinted that my relatives were being misled, and even suggested that I was unstable. Things escalated so much that my uncle reached out to a lawyer just to make sure they were protected. I offered to pay the legal fee. He refused. We don't take from family, he said, but we do accept gifts. That winter, I spent Christmas with them. Just the three of us. No roles to play, no expectations hanging in the air. We cooked together, played cards, watched old films in pajamas, and laughed until our stomachs hurt. My aunt handed me a scarf she had knitted herself. My uncle made hot chocolate, slightly burnt, but we drank it anyway. It was the best holiday I'd ever known. At one point, my aunt turned to me and asked, "Do you regret it?" The answer came instantly, no, because I hadn't simply left a family behind. I had walked into one. I stopped wishing to be noticed and instead chose the people who already saw me for who I was. Eventually, the calls ended. The noise faded out. They moved forward, found new faces to perform for, fresh stories to spin. I didn't. I stayed here, in this small, quiet life where love has no conditions and kindness doesn't come with hidden costs. Sometimes I still revisit that dinner, the shock on my sister's face when I gave the envelope to someone else, my mother's frozen stare, the tightness in my father's jaw. Those memories once haunted me. Now, they remind me of the night I stopped apologizing for simply being, the night I finally said enough and meant it. I'll admit, there are moments I still wonder if I handled it perfectly. Not the choice to give the money to my aunt and uncle. That still feels right to my core. But the way I delivered it, the public handoff, the silence that followed. Was it too much or perhaps not enough? I never meant to humiliate anyone. I acted because I couldn't keep pretending anymore. But sometimes lying awake, I ask myself, should I have waited? Slipped the envelope to them quietly? Would that have softened the blow or simply made it easier for my parents to twist the story? So what do you think? Did I make the right call? Was I justified or was there a gentler way to walk away? Share your thoughts in the comments. I'd truly love to know what you would have done if you were in my place. And if you'd like more raw, real stories like this about family, choices, and learning to stand your ground, don't forget to hit subscribe.